Welcome back to Timo's Dinky Detailing. Today I'm going to be working on a Dinky 162 Ford Zephyr. Looking at it, you have no idea what it is unless you look at the bottom because it's so caked with the paint that some child has put there, and it's almost unrecognizable. So this is going to be an interesting challenge, and it's going to be fun to look at the comparison at the end. So here we look at the base. It's in good shape, but it's covered in rust. It's missing a tire. I broke that in between videotaping the turntable event. So first step is to remove the base. And to do that, I'm using my beautiful 3/8 split point drill bit. This is a drill bit that doesn't wander anywhere. It always drills on center, and I don't need to do even the center drilling on these. So I love this drill, and that's what I'm using every time when I can. Sometimes it's too tight space because it's a big drill. So I got that off, and let's see if it'll pry off. Okay, that popped off in the front. Try and find a place I can get in here. There we go, and now that's off. Yeah, so I busted the one smooth tire, and you can see the two tires are knobby and the one is smooth. So I've got a sacrificial car where I'm going to get these knobby tires, another pair of them, so that I can have 4 of the same tires on it, because I think it came, well, this one actually came sometimes with knobby, sometimes with smooth. So here's my Nicholson file with the one edge ground off of it, and that way I can file right up against these hubs, and it doesn't even take the old paint off. It just runs smooth on it, so it doesn't damage the nearby surfaces. I use the file because if I use the Dremel tool, it makes a lot of noise. Probably, actually, even if it's daytime, I'm going to use the file these days because the Dremel tool takes just as long or longer to get it out, and then it makes a lot of noise, and I don't like that. So why not just use the file? I'm really happy with that, and I'm in better control using the file, so I don't take off too much material. So the base goes into Evapo Rust and the axles. And here I'm center drilling in order to prepare for tap drill. And as usual, I put a little bit of tapping fluid, or in this case Cool Tool. I don't think you can buy Cool Tool anymore. That's from back in the day. But you can use any oil or tapping fluid, because you don't want to use a dry drill on these, because this material is chewy, especially on maybe on 60s and newer Corgi and Dinky toys, but these old ones, the castings are very chewy and they're going to break off the end of your drill. So to the toolbox, I get my 440 taps and the tap handle, and I go in, and you'll notice I'm not having to back off this tap. This is a machine tap. It has a spiral point, so it's pushing the swarf in front of the tap, and it's for when you need to use a machine to drive it, but I like to use it because I don't like backing off the tap every turn, backing it off a quarter turn to break off the swarf like you do with the hand tap. It's hard to find these machine taps unless you get it from a machine supplier, so you're probably going to wind up using hand taps, so just so you don't break off a tap by watching the way I do it. So here I've got another tap with the end ground off, and that lets me get the full threads deeper into the hole so that my screw will fit there. So you can see how dirty the inside of the toy is, and you can see that it's yellow and green paint inside there. It's not really, it's a yellow, it's off-white really, but it's actually kind of a light green off-white. So this toy was light green and off-white, greenish off-white. So it was a two-tone model, so that's what I'm going to restore it as. Now here's something I learned on the Matchbox toy that I did before, it was difficult to find a place to grab onto the casting. And so I'm going to be using this every time. I've made a piece of sheet metal with a couple of holes in it, and I can screw it where this base screws on, and I can hold on to that using my hemostats. And the hemostats like the thin material better than going on some thick post that's inside the Dinky toy. So here's some boiling water and caustic soda, and that's how I'm outside, and I'm stripping the paint off with that stuff. It makes a lot of stinky smell, so that's why I do it outside. Come winter, I'm going to have to do this in the snow. That should be interesting. So there, I got the paint off. The front is a little bit beat up, and the bumpers on the back a little bit beat up. So I'm going to clean, I'll first get the little bits of paint out of the corners, but I'm going to clean up those bumpers and as much as I can of the casting so that it'll look a little bit more like a new casting. In this case, the only problem with the casting is the damage from play or from being in a toy box. So I didn't spend a lot of time showing me brushing that thing. You can see it's got nice detail for the handles, which is great. So back to the Evapo Rust, and the base is now rust free. And it still has some black on it. That's from the bluing. These bases were not painted. They were blued like you would blue a gun barrel. But the Evapo Rust takes that stuff off too. So we get down to the bare metal. Same with the axles. There's not a spot of rust on them. I don't even think I left this overnight. This was just for a few hours, and it got everything off in a few hours. So a little bit of brushing, and the metal is a little bit pitted from the rust, but I'm going to paint the semi-gloss paint on it, and it's going to hide the damage. Here's my parallel pliers. These are pliers. They had teeth on them, and I disassembled it, and I ground the teeth off when I was a tool maker, because these are beautiful for working with small sheet metal items, which happens all the time. And what's cool is I'm using them more than ever now that I'm restoring these Dinky toys, because it's perfect for straightening these sheet metal bases. Not sure if you can still buy. I haven't even looked if you can still buy somewhere from some supplier these kinds of parallel pliers, but they're just awesome. I love them. So base looks good, ready for paint. So I'll test it on the model. Fits perfectly. No more work needs to be done. So these hubs, the paint comes off these hubs really well. I never had any trouble getting the paint off of them. Just brushing them up a little bit to clean off the little powdery residue after they were in the caustic soda. So here I'm cleaning off. There's the casting lines, and it kind of takes away from the smoothness of the body. So I'm cleaning that up and cleaning up the front bumpers. The bumpers were in rough shape. And just when you do the chrome on them, it's better to have a nice smooth surface so that it looks better. So I spent a bit of time getting those bumpers to be smooth looking. The damage isn't from the original casting, it's from play. So here we are. This is the inside of the base. So that gets the semi-gloss paint. This is just hardware store semi-gloss paint. And here are the hubs. These are getting the Tamiya white fine surface primer, which is the best primer that I've ever run into. For a while I couldn't get any of it, and now it's available again, so I've got several cans. I don't want to run out of this stuff. So I put a couple coats of the primer on there because it's going to be off-white, so it's going to be basically white color, so you want to make sure there's none of the casting showing through. Here I've flipped over the hubs, and while we're doing that, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Share it because we want to get some new viewers on here. YouTube is not exactly promoting my site right now, so any help will will be a big help. So here I've tried to buy some Mr. Hobby white paint, but nobody had any in stock. So I said, okay, let me try some Tamiya. It's cheaper, and let's see if it's any good. So I've also bought the Tamiya Green, so I'm not mixing different paints. I'm mixing the same brand. And here, that's as much green paint as I needed. It's an off-white. It's a greenish off-white, so one drop was enough. You can't see it there. You'll see it in a minute. It looks, the camera doesn't always show what the how the exact green. There you can get a tiny hint of it there. So into the airbrush for painting the body. So into the spray booth, and I spray just the top parts of the bodywork. I mean, it sprays all over, overspray, but I'm not concentrating on the bottom parts because they're going to get a different color. So now the hubs get the same treatment. They get the pale green paint, and I'm going to have to do both sides of those. Here's where I flip them over. You can see they're each sitting on their own little pad of non-stick baking paper so that I can paint them on the same day. I just need them to be dry for an hour or two, and then I can paint the other side. And because of the baking paper, the paint doesn't stick. So here I'm taping up the top part so that the bottom is only showing, and I'm using Tamiya. It's the plastic masking tape that's designed for going around curves, and which is helpful in this case too, because I'm wrapping it all the way around the model. So obviously it's having to curve as it goes around those corners because the bodywork is angled. So anyway, I like this tape to use as the tape for the edges where the paint is going to be, because it's better than using the paper tape at the edges. It leaves a cleaner edge. Now on the front, you'll see around the grill there's this piece of bodywork that wraps around the grill, and Dinky painted the two-tone toys straight across, and so that little bump on top of the grill gets painted the top color. But I'm going to be painting it the bottom color because the real car, that little bridge around there is painted the two-tone color that's on the lower part of the car. That's where the hood meets the grill, and there's a bit of bodywork. So that's going to have the lower body color. Now Dinky wouldn't have done that because it's a lot more work to wrap the paint around that. So they just put it straight across. But this is a kind of a resto mod, so I'm trying to make it more accurate to the original car. And those cars were painted in two-tone exactly as Dinky has done it. Now I've put there, you can see I've taped it with paper so that there's minimal amount of tape actually on the paint. So here I'm going back to my Tamiya Green. It's a beautiful light green color, and that's the color I want on the bottom. I put a little bit of my Mr. Hobby leveling thinner. People on the internet says that that's the best leveling thinner, whether you're using Mr. Hobby or Tamiya paints. A little bit more, and we get it thin enough to go into the airbrush to paint the bottom color. So to the spray booth, and we paint the lower part of the car. I speed this up a little bit because I know it's kind of boring to sit and watch painting. So I jump ahead, and you can see I'm getting a nice shiny coat on there. And I've blocked up the inside, so the inside is going to be the light green, and only the bottom part will be the darker green. Don't know if that was necessary, but that's what I decided to do. So now I put this thing back on so it's easier for me to handle the toy, because this Tamiya paint is supposed to be very soft, and it's easier to damage it, and this is just an hour after painting when I'm taking off the tape, so I don't want to touch it. So here, because I put the paper there to protect the upper level paint, it's a good idea, but it's a bit of a challenge to take the stuff off again. Now, the Tamiya paint, it looks great, everybody uses it. It's cheaper than the Mr. Hobby paint, but on a later stage, I actually got my thumb onto the lower part of the green the next day, so it was a day dry paint. My thumb was on it for like 2 seconds, almost no pressure, and I go, oops, better not do that. But I had already put my thumbprint in the paint, and it was deep. So later on I tried to sand it off, and I couldn't sand it off. It was too deep to sand off. So I chose originally Mr. Hobby because I watched a video where the guy was testing, and he said, look at this, I can spray it, and the next day I can put my thumb on it, it doesn't leave a thumbprint. Well, now I know what that meant. So I don't think I'm going to be using the Tamiya paint. I'm going to stick with the Mr. Hobby because in a day it doesn't leave a thumbprint. So here I'm solving my problem by coating the entire model with Mr. Hobby Super Clear, and this is nice clear coating that's going to harden the surface, and it will smooth out those imperfections like that thumbprint, and actually it worked beautifully to get rid of the thumbprint. So thank goodness for Super Clear. So here I've got my tires. And here's my donor car. It's an Austin Somerset, and I had to take the base off of it so I could get these two tires off. They're the same style of tire, and I had 2 on this model and 2 on the Somerset. So Somerset sacrifices those tires for this model. So I'm using a little bit of thinner. These wheels are all covered in paint, including on the rolling surfaces. So the child who painted this rolled it over the paint. So this got most of the paint off of it, and then I add a little bit of Meguiar's tire shining stuff, and it's very stinky, but it makes the tires look like they're brand new, so I don't mind using it. So there, they look like new tires, and here's my axles. They're bent. They're not rusty, but they're bent, so we're going to have to straighten those. And the nice thing is these are very soft, so a couple of taps with the ball peen hammer, and boom, it's already straight. And with the other one, it was also bent. Oh, like 3 taps. Looks good. So there we go. So now we'll buff them up on the buffing wheel. I put them in my pin vise, so I have to do one end at a time. So one end, and then I flip it around to do the other end and bring out the other axle, a little bit more buffing compound, and do one end and then the other end. And here you can see I polished the end of it as well. This is the mushroom end, because that's the only part of the axle you see, so you want to make sure that that's shiny. So those are buffed up. There's my axles, my base. 1, 2, 3, 4 hubs onto the model and off to the vise for a little tapping with the ball peen hammer. Alright, so that's the one done, and let's go to the other one. So there it's on and the base is complete. So now I can attach the body, take off that little bracket, and the beautiful shiny looking base goes on. And I put my cap screws back on. Those cap screws are now pale green. And now time for detailing. I've got this little device, a little angle bracket with a magnet. That's why I put the base on before doing the detailing, because this magnet clamp lets me adjust and move the Dinky toy around at different angles for painting. So my headlights are going to be, so these ones were just the headlights were painted silver, but the real toy, or the real car, there's a frame around the headlight that is chrome. So that's what in fact I wanted to get here. So here, paint the grille like magic. So I'm going to paint the headlights white and leave the chrome ring around it, which will look nice. So here you can see I can move it on the base to whatever angle I want. That tip didn't work, so I go to my fingernail paint brushes, and this is a dot painter, and this gives me way more control for these tiny things to paint. Instead of using a brush, I'm just using that little ball. So here I can flip it around. And I put a little bit, and I think my memory ran out there. So I went and got some of the memory cleared up and come back and finish the detailing. So out comes the nail painting brush with the dot painter to do the taillights. The castings of these Dinky toys are pretty rough, so it's a little bit difficult doing the detailing because they're not really defined what you're looking at. So now we get the white part. I find that this looks good. Nobody else does it, but they should. I like to paint the headlights with the silver ring and then the white in the middle, and it looks like the headlight is on. It gives you that illusion, and I just love that. If you want to see how it looks really good, have a look on the video of the milk float turned into a race support vehicle. There's only one headlight, but boy does it look gorgeous. This one, the casting was damaged quite a bit, so it doesn't quite look as good as the milk float, but it still looks pretty good. So here I'm using, again, the nail painting brush with the dot painter to get the marker lamps, and then this little emblem in the middle of the grill is red. It's red and black, but I'm not going to paint detail because that's getting way too small. And then the final bit will be the number plates. So I don't have the capability of printing white onto a decal, so I put a white underneath so that the letters on this clear decal, the white will show through the clear numbers. I can also do this if it was painted white. I could do it that way, but in this case it was painted silver. There, that fell off my tweezers and stuck to the bodywork, so rescued that. And I'm using a little bit of soap in my water. That's how I can do it. I had so much trouble before with the decals. Put a little soap in the water, and the water stays on the surface that you're attaching the decal instead of beading up. And that's my secret for getting this thing so that the decal doesn't stick right away and then you can't move it anymore. So this solves that problem. So that's why you can see me putting this little bit. This is a white decal paper. I didn't print anything on it. All I did was take a piece of the of the white decal paper, spray it with the clear coat, and then cut it out to the shape I need, which is the shape of this license plate, or number plate as the Brits would call it. And it is a British car, so yes, it's a number plate. Oh, and the text I use on that is called UK number plate, so it's even the authentic font. So that's my final bit of detailing on this car. So now to remind you of what we started out with. Well, this is a mess. The original paint is long gone. It's been painted several times with different colors. It's been painted with spots, and it looks like it's got some kind of graffiti painted on it, which I can't quite read. And it looks a mess. You can't even tell what the model looks like or have a clue what it's going to look like. So let's see what it looks like now. Well, that's one of the biggest changes of any restoration that I have done. It's almost unbelievable that you could take a car in such rough condition and make the thing look so beautiful, like it's a candy you could eat. So I'm really pleased with that restoration. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Timo's Dinky Detailing. Until next time, be seeing you.